two public sessions, had a first reading and second reading, as well as a public hearing on the proposed budget. So this is the final step according to state code that for the approval process. So briefly, some of the budget highlights that we have for the upcoming fiscal year proposed budget is the goal is based on the foundation of this budget document here, that by fiscal year 22-23, which is not next year, but the fiscal year following that, all non-seasonal employees will be brought up to $15 an hour for pay purposes. There was quite a bit of organizational changes across the city, starting within the executive team, but then also within a lot of the departments. Kind of talked about it at the last meeting and all the other work sessions. But essentially, we've taken this budget is proposing the layers of oversight for a lot of the departments that are smaller to go away, and replacing those layers of oversight with layers of doers. So the top heaviness of the departments themselves are being proposed to kind of go away. We've budgeted the $750,000 to be transferred to the court's capital fund per the court order. We've realigned funding sources for positions. So essentially, I think I've discussed it before, but if you are housed in a department, whether it's budget, procurement, finance, public works, police, fire, whatever your home department is, your funding is now being charged there as well. So you can see in the budget document that though the personnel numbers did not change, some of the staff, as far as the numbers of staff didn't change, but the salaries and benefits and those numbers went up because we shifted those and put those into their correct home. And then the budget document in itself, there were a lot of different key things that the budget and procurement office did this fiscal year. There was a personnel breakdown every fiscal year that we've done a budget, but this year it coincides with that breakdown. There's also a coinciding salary breakdown as well. So if you have 10 positions there, it'll show your 10 positions as titles as well as the salaries. And when you add all those numbers up, it'll match the numbers within the budget document. So you can kind of track and see what positions or what the salaries are and how it relates to the document. So those two, the personnel on all the budget page for each department has that new information. Also, each department was tasked with creating departmental goals for fiscal year 21-22, and all of those are represented in the budget document itself. And even further than that, among the goals, we have the performance measures for each department to measure the effectiveness and the efficiencies within those departments. And all of those goals and all those performance measures are either aligned directly or indirectly with the previously adopted strategic plan. So moving forward, each department is working in their own arena and own aspect of government, but they're all working towards the same strategic goals for the city. Progressive funding for government operations returning to normalcy. As we know, the pandemic is kind of, it's not over by any stretch of the imagination, but we're definitely on the tail end from what it appears. So obviously a lot of the operations will return to normalcy, and this budget does incorporate a slow and methodical approach to that as it relates to a lot of our functions. And then there's a 2% reduction in overall healthcare costs for this upcoming fiscal year. And ideally, when we put the RFP out for those same services during this upcoming fiscal year, we're hopeful that those rates will continue to decrease following our 10% decrease last year. So that is the goal overall. There's level funding for Petersburg Public Schools at $10 million. And then last but not least, we adhered to the financial policies of budgeting the $500,000 towards fund balance and $500,000 towards the capital improvement plan or projects. So I talked about the strategic plan as it relates to our goals and measures for each department, but I wanted to highlight the 4 strategic goals again. I think anytime we do a finance budget presentation, or quite frankly, any presentation, I think the strategic plan needs to be front and center on that so that we know that that's what's guiding the decision and the practices behind what we do. So the first goal is promote economic development to attract new businesses and strengthen the city's tax base. We just short phrase it as economic development. The next one is neighborhood vitality, which is support community development activities to enhance neighborhoods and improve housing. Good governance, it's provide good governance for efficient, effective, and equitable service delivery, productive citizen engagement, and community improvement. And finally, Celebrate Petersburg, which is celebrate our Petersburg's history and culture. And the reason why, again, I want to highlight all these goals is because our budget document and our operations as a whole need to be aligned with these 4 goals in that document as a whole, document overall, so that way we can move the city in the direction that it needs to be moved. This screenshot here is our proposed operating budget summary for all funds. And we can see that it's $103,613,656. It's about a little less than 10% decrease from the amendment that we're currently working under now. And the main reason why that number is decreased by 10% is because we have a lot of federal CARES current fiscal year we're currently operating under now, as well as our CDBG funds. We're only budgeting the $632,000 for the new upcoming program year. There will be supplemental appropriations for any carryover funding that has not been expended by the end of June 30th, this current fiscal year, as well as our grants fund. That's a significant decrease with the CARES funding, but also the supplemental grants that we know we will receive from time to time throughout the fiscal year. Due to the policies that were put in place about 4 years ago, we don't budget for those up front. We wait till we receive the award letter, and then we take it to council for appropriation. And the same thing will be said about the carryover. Any of those grants that are carried over, we want to wait until the books are closed, so to speak, in June, so that way we know exactly what amount we're bringing forward, so to ensure that we have the right numbers from a revenue and expenditure standpoint covered. And this was this is our general fund summary from fiscal year 17 to 18. Now, remember in previous iterations, I had the little charts, but then the revenue and expenditures were on those little line graphs were on 2 different pages, and it didn't put it in perspective. But I wanted to combine them to show exactly what I was talking about. The green line is our revenue, and the red line is our expenditures. So when I talked about the volatility of our revenue and our expenditures, and then also the gap between our revenues actually coming in above our expenditures, this puts it in perspective as that over the last 3 years, not counting this year, is the balance, and then obviously the proposed budget is balanced. But those 17, 18, 18, 19, and 19, 20, those are the audited years. So it shows that our revenues have come in over our expenditures, even though we had a steep decline from 18, 19 to 19, 20 in revenue due to our fiscal restraint within the city and the way we've been operating. We were still able to come in under expenditures under revenue. So I wanted to highlight that in a way that puts it in context. This slide is one that I wanted to leave in as well. It talks about our, and I briefly talked about it at the introduction, but it's our personnel numbers going from 624 to 645 full-time and 77 part-time to 83 full-time. And this is again found on pages 25 through 38 of the budget document itself. And the reason why I wanted to leave this on there because it shows the fluctuations of the departments that had pluses and minuses within their budget. And some of those I spoke to earlier with the realignment of what we were doing. This proposed budget is essentially doing away with several layers or many different layers of the oversight. And we actually were able to increase our staffing levels. And if you look back, I mean, if you remember back to the previous slides, the budget itself is relatively flat compared to the fact that the budget's relatively flat and the personnel numbers are going up speaks to the level of what we were trying to accomplish, which is to bring in staff that'll actually be able to be productive, efficient, and effective for the community. This next slide can be found on pages 191 through 196 of the budget document itself. It's our the summary of the fiscal year 21-22 capital budget. Big key point here is the $500,000 that's unallocated that we're going to be bringing to council and I believe after speaking with Mr. Miller, I think the recommendation would be to wait until the incoming city manager comes on board in July, and then have the conversation with him as to how we should approach that unallocated $500,000 that we're setting aside as part of our financial policies, rather than trying to make an assumption of what he may or may not want us to do or recommend moving forward. So that was scheduled to go in June, but we're going to wait until July or August or whenever he decides that we want to do that. So that way he has the opinions and the guidance on what we do regarding that. But the proposed 21-22 capital budget is $18.008594 million. You can see the facilities is $260,000, fire and EMS is $100,000. Both of those are actually within the operating budget itself within the general fund, but the reason why it's on both is because there are capital expenses that need to be captured within the capital budget. Stormwater is $418,250, also within the stormwater operating budget. Streets operations to $3.1 million within the streets operations budget. Water and wastewater at 4.7 and 4.6 respectively. Also, some of which is within the operating, a lot of it is within our VRA funding that we already have existent. Petersburg Area Transit is also within their operating budget at $907,000. And then our $2.5 million park and ride project, which is not accounted for in the proposed budget, but it will be once we get the numbers ironed out at June 30th, and that'll be supplementally appropriated. Then the $750,000 for our courts. The reason why I broke it down the way I did is a lot of this funding is incorporated within the operating budget itself. Obviously, the big chunk that's not is our park and ride, as well as our water and wastewater. And water and wastewater is primarily VRA funded, which we've taken before council multiple fiscal years to get that appropriated and approved. So timeline of budget approval process, I can fast forward all the way to May 25th. That's where we're at today. At the last meeting, we had our public hearing for the proposed operating budget and also the second reading. And then we actually approved the Petersburg City Public Schools budget on the 18th. So today, the next and final step for this process is the actual approval. And then June 1st we just made the decision actually 10 minutes before this council meeting. So this still shows June 1st and 15th for the CIP conversation, but that's actually being moved until July or August. And June 30th is the end of the fiscal year. All my thank yous, they haven't changed. City Council for the support and the guidance. Interim City Manager Miller for his guidance and support during this process. The budget team, Mr. Williams, Ms. Tollison, and Ms. Mann for their tireless efforts during the process. It was brutal, to say the least, but nevertheless, we're nearing the end on that. And then the City of Petersburg staff, as well as the community for their input, feedback, and guidance throughout this process. It's been crucial for us getting to where we're at now. And that is all I have from a presentation standpoint, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Floyd. And again, thank you and your team for all the hard work you've put into this year's operating budget. Next, we'll have questions from members of council. We'll start off from Councilman Cuthbert.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Floyd, thank you so much for all the work that you and your team put together to give us what you have just presented. Tell council more, please, about the department performance measures. Can you give us some detail on that, and where do we find that in the budget?
Yes, sir. It's a complicated answer, but realistically, every department has a page within the budget or multiple pages within the budget. So I'm just going to flip through to the police department. That's on page 107 in the budget document. That actually shows, there's usually every department has at least 2 to 3 pages. There's a budget narrative, there's goals, and then there's performance measures that are usually on that first sheet. So page 107 is the police departments, and it's number of community events, number of traffic crashes, decrease the number of total outstanding warrants, and then the baseline and the target that they're going for. So every department's page or pages, on one of their pages, there's a performance measures listed there. So the goal for that was to essentially have every department give us measurables that they would like to see tracked and highlighted from a standpoint of showing improvement within their department. So for budget and procurement, my department, ours was our processing time. So we don't deal with external folks. It's mainly predominantly internal folks. And we know that a lot of departments, when they try to make purchases, they have to go through our office. If they need to do budget transfers to spend money, it has to go through our office. So our goal and our rationale behind measures was we want to hold ourselves accountable and measure our efficiencies with our turnaround times. So that was specific to our department. Every other department was specific to them.
What about billing and collections? How did they score on your performance measures?
So this is the first year, sir, that we've actually incorporated performance measures, but I can honestly say what our office has been doing while I've been sitting here in this case, doing a lot of the presentations before council and the community. Staff is actually working to build a comprehensive dashboard with these measures. So then, actually, once this budget gets approved, we're going to have a big city department meeting and talk about what the next steps are. But each month, the departments are going to be responsible for inputting the information for their particular measure into our dashboard so that we can track it on a month-to-month basis and then provide quarterly updates to council as it relates to where we're at performance-wise. So that's a long answer for saying this is the first time we've implemented this, sir. So there is no, for the most part, there is no raw data to compare. It's just targets for this upcoming year. Now there are other, like the police department, fire. They have measures that they have to submit to the state and their federal governing agencies, so they have data, but a lot of the departments don't.
Is there anything in the budget document under department performance measures that addresses the performance of billing and collections?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And let me go to their budget page real quick, sir. That is on page 82 of our budget document, sir.
And how did billing and collections score on these performance measures?
Right, and that's what I'm saying. These aren't currently being tracked as it stands right now. What we're trying to do is move forward and start tracking these from scratch, moving forward. So the data isn't there yet on this, if that makes sense. So July, August is when this really starts kicking off. And we'll have the information as the upcoming fiscal year progresses. We'll be able to provide that score that you were discussing. So their first measure was number of payments posted within 2 to 3 business days. The target is 97%. We have no idea where they're at. And it's also for the upcoming fiscal year. So we'll know come August what their numbers were in for July.
All right. Well, I guess 2 follow-up questions on that. 1, why is that 97%, not 100%? And 2, do you expect that this time next year, staff will be presenting council with performance measures that for billing and collections that really document the performance of billing and collections?
I believe that the measures that we do have.
Mr. Miller, you want to comment
Yes,
on that?
would be for the entire city. Every city department has to have, starting July will be our baseline. And those performance measures will begin in July. Next year, this time, Mr. Cuthbert, we will be able to measure, did the respective departments reach their goals? So we can't answer you now because we don't know what they are. But we'll know next year this time.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. City Manager. I believe you, as well as anybody, know the shortcomings of the billing and collections department. And so I hope, Mr. City Manager, that you will see that the performance measures required of billing and collections really do measure their performance so that City Council will no longer be inundated with complaints from citizens as we are being inundated now. That's a hope. Do you think that I'll be disappointed this time next year, Mr. Miller?
I hope you're not disappointed, Mr. Cuthbert. I don't have a crystal ball. I want you to be happy. I want you and all your colleagues to be happy, but hope's not a plan.
All
so
right.
I think what we're trying to do now, sir, is establish a baseline and move forward with respect to our new workforce over there. Remember, now billing and collections is getting stable under Mrs. Jordan. So I think that you'll see, as she becomes more acclimated and stable in her position, you'll see some changes over there. So there's a lot of education going into this, a lot of training going into this. And so I think that having this baseline is a nuance for us as a city and a new beginning. So to answer your question about you being happy, I hope you have a smile on your face come next June. And
all right.
I'll be happy.
Well, good. Well, that's all fine. I think, judging from the complaints that I'm receiving, an important measure of performance of billing and collections is going to be the speed with which they correctly credit citizens' accounts with payments. That seems to be one serious shortcoming right now. I don't know how one measures that, but I suspect that with people like Mr. Floyd helping to design the performance metrics, that a criterion can be articulated that will encourage prompt and accurate posting, and that will be reported to council this time next year. Mr. Floyd, let me go to one other topic, and that is the enterprise funds. Is it feasible to set up the Petersburg Area Transit as an enterprise fund? Is there any legal reason why we could not do that? And if there's no legal reason that you're aware of that we could not do that, would that be a good idea? It seems to me that the Petersburg Area Transit just keeps incrementally growing and growing and growing and growing. And every time I comment on this, I'm told, well, they're going to be, most of that money is reimbursed. But now we've got bus service going into the outlying counties. It's going, at one time it was going down to Emporia. It just, and I look at what you presented to us today, and I see a $907,000 line item for Petersburg Area Transit. And maybe again, the answer is 99% of it is reimbursed. But would you address that for council, please?
Sir, the Petersburg Area Transit is an enterprise fund, sir.
Okay.
It in and of itself is an enterprise fund, yes, sir.
All right. Well, let's go to the $907,000. How much of that is really Petersburg's, and how much of that is a wash?
So if you look at page 168 within the budget document, it kind of breaks down their formulas for their funding as it relates to the capital piece. So with their operations, their administrative, their administrative and preventive maintenance, those are state, federal, and local match. All of their grants, technically, they're written as grants. All of them have federal, state, and local. Sometimes you get a state, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you get a federal, sometimes you don't. But those are the three categories, if that makes sense. For the administration, their normal operating, and I'm getting to your point, I just wanted to put it in context before I get to the capital piece. It's 50-50 for administrative operating, and it's 80-20 for preventive maintenance. So 50-50 for administrative means the state and federal funds 50, the local side matches it at 50%. For preventive maintenance, it's 80% state and federal and 20% local. For capital, it varies on the project. But if you look at it on page 168, so one bus costs $127,957, okay? 28% is federal, 68% is state, and locally is 4%, which equates to $5,118. So the vast majority is external funding.
Right, it's a great, I can see how it's a great deal to buy a bus for $5,000. But the 50-50, I begin to choke up a little bit on that. So overall, on the operating side of Petersburg Area Transit, how much is that operation costing Petersburg in unreimbursed dollars?
That is going to be, give me 1 second. It's 800. $887,779 is the transfer from the general fund to transit. Now, the reason why that number is only a part of the local share. There's also the local revenue that is generated as well from their advertising, their bus fares, and things of that nature. But the local match from the city is $887,000, which is actually decreased by $120,000 over the last few years. They've actually reduced that significantly over the last few years.
All right.
Thank you very much, Mr. Floyd. Mr. Mayor, thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Councilman Hill had his hand up, and then we go to Councilwoman Truska Wilson-Smith. Follow up.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hope all is well. Just want to congratulate the finance team and all of their hard effort. I mean, Mr. Floyd, you all have done a good job in putting together this packet and listening to the council and to the community. Also, especially, you know, by our finance director just left not too long ago, and we have an interim finance director. So I want to thank everybody who's on board. What I would like to say for members of council, that we still reserve the right to amend some things once we get the new city manager on. I want to thank Kenneth Miller as well for helping us navigate through this. Because if something comes up and he may see the budget, although he's seen the budget, and we see that something could be working more effectively, that we could make those modifications through an amendment if need be. Not saying that I see anything that needs to be, but I know we were trying our best to streamline some of the top heaviness that we've had, and we've done most of that. But if we see where we can also trim down a little bit more, but still get the workforce to continue to work in a professional manner and things of that nature, then I'll be looking forward to that as well. So I just want to congratulate our interim city manager, Robert Floor, and the finance team, that procurement and everybody, and all the departments that worked on this effort. And Mr. Mayor, after you finish the questions, I'll be ready to make a motion to approve after you finish taking the questions. That's all.
Thank you. Next we go to Councilwoman Truska Wilson-Smith.
Good afternoon. Excuse me. Good afternoon, everybody. I too would like to thank Mr. Miller and the entire team for the work that they have done. Last year, this time when we got ready to approve the budget, I did not vote yes, because I stated and felt that we were too top heavy. And so now here we are a year later, and we are not too top heavy. So that makes me very happy. Also makes me happy that there are explanations within the budget. Last year's budget had contractual services, but we did not know what those contractual services were. This year, they have been explained within the budget. I have the following questions. There's $50,000 allotted for Fort Boss Fire Station. It appears to do with repairs with the sewer system. Are we using that fire station? Are we making plans to turn it into a full-fledged fire station? What is the goal in making these repairs now?
All right, Mr. Floyd, you want to take that, or do you want to go to Chief Lebo?
I would defer to the department as it relates to that particular question, sir.
Okay.
More of an operational question.
All right, Garrett, is Chief Lebo. I saw him on the Zoom. Can you unmute him?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mayor. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you, Chief. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. The Fort Boss facility was an active fire station that was taken out of service some years ago, converted to a training center, and about 18 months ago, they moved fire administration out of the facility beside City Hall, and the Fort Boss facility is now the home of fire administration. So it is occupied daily and used as a training center when we hire new recruits. Of the $50,000, we do have a damaged top in the septic tank, and when we get heavy rains, the tank floods and we have no drainage. So the money that's allocated there is to either make repairs to the current system or connect us to the city sewer. We also are on a well water system here, and the water needs to be treated to be used. So part of that $50,000, again, is to look at tying us into the city utilities.
Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am.
The next question I had is, when I looked at the budget, I could not find the line item for tourism. I know I can overlook things, but can you tell me where to look for the tourism line item?
All right,
So
Mr.
the
Floyd.
tourism itself, ma'am, it's actually housed within the Economic Development Department. So their funds are incorporated within that budget. So Mr. Sergey and his funding and programs were moved within the Economic Development budget, ma'am.
So
That's page 179, right? Mr. Floyd?
it doesn't
Yes, sir.
actually say tourism then.
Correct.
So how much of what's in that budget is for tourism?
Is Reggie here to break down that exact breakdown from a programmatic standpoint? Mr. Tabor?
Gary, can you unmute Mr. Reggie Tabor?
Is the planning department or is he?
Yes.
Yeah, this is Mr. Lyons here in that whole piece. I don't have the exact amount in that whole piece, but I can work to get that to you as expeditiously as possible.
And I have unmuted planning.
Regiment.
Mr. Tabor, did you want to speak?
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Great. Yes. So we that information is incorporated into the economic development budget.
But the question is, how, excuse me, how much of that budget is for tourism and how many employees are in tourism?
Okay. There is one part-time employee in tourism.
Okay,
And
and that's it. Okay, that's all I needed to know about that.
okay.
And the next question is, on the proposed organizational chart. I'm so sorry about that. On the proposed organizational chart, it shows that's the employees, that city council supervises. And then when you get to the expenditure sheet of city council, it shows that we're paying for the clerk of council and assistant clerk of council. So that chart does not coincide with the spending sheet. So the question becomes, is the assistant clerk of council to be on the organizational chart? Or are we keeping the assistant clerk of council? And if we are keeping her, then what grounds is it that we are doing this?
Mr. Mayor, I would ask if we're talking about a personnel issue that we should go into closed session.
All right, at this time, is there a motion to go into closed session, to discuss a personnel issue?
So moved.
Second.
All right,
Second.
you got a second? All right. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Cuthbert,
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Myers,
Aye.
Councilmember Hill. Councilmember Hill,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Smith Lee, Aye. Mayor Perrin.
Aye.
Aye.
We're now in closed session.
Let's leave council members and Mr. Miller.
Recording in progress.
All right.
Recording stopped.
Just made you the host, Garrett.
Thank you, sir.
All right, everybody's in.
Yes, sir. I believe they are.
All right, Mr. Williams.
Yes, sir. The mayor would entertain a motion to conclude the closed session call today and certify in accordance with 2.23712 of the Code of Virginia that only those matters lawfully identified in the motion for which the closed session was called were discussed during the closed session. If any member believes that there was a departure from the foregoing, he shall so state for the record, identifying the substance of the departure which he believes has occurred. This requires a roll call vote.
Recording in progress.
So moved.
Second. Second, Vice Mayor Smith Lee. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll? Is Ms. Jackson muted?
She should be
Okay,
coming
Mayor.
up.
Okay, she's in. All right, Ms. Jackson, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Cuthbert,
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Myers.
Aye.
Is Councilmember Hart on?
No.
No. Councilmember Hill,
Aye.
Councilmember Smith Lee. Aye. Mayor Perm.
Aye.
We're now back in open session.
All right, we're back in open session, and Councilman Wilson Smith was had the floor as far as asking questions. Councilman Wilson Smith, do you have any other questions you need to
I
ask?
do not.
Okay, we'll move on to Vice Mayor Smith Lee. Had your hand up?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to thank the finance team for a transparent report. Also our interim city manager. But I do want to just ask the interim city manager something. Is there any way that we can incorporate a pay raise for the city employees, about a 3 or 4% raise? And if so, can you check to see and to give us the percentage of how much money it will be for them, for the entire city to get like a 3% raise or a 4% raise? And I'm not talking about upper level. I'm talking about the city employees who come to work and work hard every day, and I don't think they've had a raise in a while.
Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, Madam Vice Mayor. To answer your question, we looked at that when we were developing the budget. For across the board, a 1% is about $390,000, give or take a few. 2%, about $780,000. A 3% pay raise is $1.2 million above what we budgeted. I think it might be an opportunity down the road, and I think Councilmember Hill said it earlier about amendments and the like. I think down the road, it may be something that we could incorporate with respect to giving the employees a pay raise. I think coming out of the state where we were, I think that we're really moving and trending in the right direction. I think if we continue to move in this fashion, operating reasonably and prudently, I think it gives us a chance for our employees to look at a pay raise. I don't know what the percentage would be, what we could afford, but I think that it's not, for me to tell you it's impossible wouldn't be truthful, man. So I think that you have a great point. But I just gave you the numbers, and don't quote me on them. I'm not really 100% sure, but those were the numbers that I think we've looked at thus far. Mr. Floyd, am I answering the question with the right numbers?
Yes, sir. Those were the correct numbers that we discussed. Yes, sir.
And Vice Mayor, it could be done incrementally down the road as well, giving a percentage in the first portion of the budget season, and then halfway through the budget season, just restructuring, reordering, and looking at where you are financially. And then another portion could be done too, if that's council's will and pleasure moving forward. We just didn't have the funds in this particular budget presentation to do more than what we've done thus far.
Okay, thank you. Mayor, back to you.
Okay, thank you. All right, Councilman Hill.
Mr. Mayor, if you finish entertaining the order, questions, I'm ready to make a motion.
Yes, please proceed. We entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, members of council and the citizens, I move that we approve the FY 2021-2022 operation capital budget as stated.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second, and that is to approve the appropriation ordinance as well. Councilman Hill, you want to approve the ordinance? All right. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Cuthbert,
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Myers,
Aye.
Councilmember Hill,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Smith Lee,
Aye.
Mayor Perm.
Aye.
Motion's passed.
All right. Thank everybody. We've approved the budget. Thank you, Mr. Miller, along with all the budget staff to help get us to on this point today. It's been a great process, and we look forward to moving into the next budget cycle. Next, we can move on to item 4, which is adjournment.
So
So
move.
moved.
All right.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. This meeting is adjourned. Have a great day.